Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. I am excited. This has been a project that I have been working on for months. As you guys know, I have dedicated this year to wind. That's right. The nemesis of all of you outdoor shooters out there, trying to do the best you can and see what's going on. We have somebody on today that I think is going to be able to give us a little bit of perspective, hopefully a little bit of education. So I'm really excited. Adam, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing so good. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and I love the outdoor vibes you got going on over there. You know, little breeze in the backyard, just
hmm
cool little podcast session.
Yeah, just relaxing out here.
So before we sort of jump into everything, a little background, guys. As you know, I work with Wind Zero. Wind Zero, the way I sort of describe it is the first ever wind reading ecosystem. Right? There's sort of a lot of little components to it, but generally the idea is this is a system that you can put downrange, pair multiple meters together, and it'll give you real-time feedback with your ballistics and help you make adjustments downrange. Now, there's been systems, everybody should sort of have a grasp on that, like a Kestrel that you can hold near you, the Calypso systems that, can be a little further out, but generally they're right near you as well. And so it may seem like this is a system that's very close to each other, but really when it comes to application, I'm starting to see this thing make extremely large impacts. And that's where I had the opportunity when I was working with Doug that I was introduced by Adam, and I sat through about an hour long session of being confused, mostly because you're extremely smart and had a lot to say. So I definitely want to talk about that a little bit, but I sort of want to talk about your background in shooting. I actually just saw, I know it wasn't that recent, but you were out with Backfire on his channel doing some shooting out there. So clearly, you're in the game, you know what's going on. But do you want to tell us a little bit about your background in the shooting community?
Yeah, so like a lot of people, I've been shooting since I was a kid and could hold a gun. And it was probably about 10 years ago that I got really serious into it. I met a guy at a gun store and he had a custom rifle, which I knew nothing about. I'm like, I gotta have one of these, and so ended up building a 260 off of Trude Remington way back when, and then got into PRS after that, and just kind of you know went in the deep end. I've been doing it ever since. My professional background is in software, and so more recently I haven't had as much time for matches and such. So I've been focused a lot on building software and working on the science side of things.
Yeah, what is it about custom rifles that just like make you really want to go buy one, right? You see it and you're like, man, that's sweet looking. I don't know what it is, but every time I see one and I have them, I'm just like, I think I need to buy another.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you can never have too many. As soon as you get one, you start dreaming about the next one. It's
hmm
it's definitely an addiction.
Yeah, and I love that now a lot of even like smaller places are carrying like higher end chassis
hmm
and stuff like that. So you can get these, semi custom built rifles that just make you that much more competitive when you go out. You've been shooting for a fairly long time, so you remember when it was really like you had to know exactly where to look to get these things built, or you were like converting a hunting rifle, right, piece by piece to
hmm
sort of be competitive.
Yeah, it's crazy how far the sport and the technology has come just in the time that I've been doing it seriously. Yeah, Precision Rifle Blog was not really a thing. He was, I think, just getting started when I got into the game, and yeah, there wasn't really a lot of info. You just kind of had to go buy some stuff and hope you got it right, and hope you got lucky with a good gunsmith who would do a good job. And
Mhm.
yeah, we've come a long way.
Yeah, I love the precision rifle blog. They do the, I don't know if it's necessarily a series, but they do those articles every once in a while. What are the pros using?
hmm
They'll do the cartridge and the stocks or the chassis and all of that stuff. And I think they just had one recently come out, but that was a thing that I really sort of grasped onto when I was early in the sport because it is really confusing, especially if you didn't grow up shooting, right?
hmm
There's a lot of terminology that's used, particularly around the rounds or cartridges that might be used. And then if you somehow stumble onto different disciplines, you sort of lose track of what's really going on. So, really great resource. A lot of really great resources in general now. It's a lot of what we do here is to try to consolidate those resources. A lot of great podcasts out now, websites, blogs, articles being written, things like that. And you're no stranger to some of these things, right? I mean, you're starting to put your own footprint on what we're doing. And what I really sort of wanted to dive in with you, right, is sort of your perspective on, cartridges and ballistics and how that sort of led into this project with Win Zero. I know we were talking and you said, you sort of had your own thing that you were doing. But you had sort of some interesting takes on there, and I know that we're likely not going to be able to see all of the things that I got to see while we were talking. But what sort of got you from I like shooting to I want to dive into this ballistic stuff a little bit more.
Yeah, it was kind of an accident. The uh, I used to shoot. I think my peak was like 20 matches in 1 year. I used to just be shooting constantly, and all my resources was going into that. And then I got married, and then I had kids, and I just didn't have the time or money to do
Mhm.
that anymore. But I still had the passion, and so that kind of just made me shift a little and start thinking about it differently and spending my time differently. And uh, I realized, for both myself and almost everyone out there, the majority of shots you miss are just due to wind.
Mhm.
And, uh, if you've ever been to a PRS match, you've probably seen the standard is somebody walks up to the line with a Kestrel, they hold it up, they take a measurement, they write their dope card down, and then 10 minutes later they get up and shoot. Uh, but the reality is the wind is changing enough to affect your shot about once per second. Um, and so I was like, the technology that's available to us isn't where it should be. Not to knock the Kestrel, I have one and it's a solid
Mhm.
device, but there's a need for real time data is the thing that
Mhm.
I was seeing. Um, and that kind of launched me into a multi-year project of learning and building. I don't know if you want to go into that.
I do. Well, I do in a second, right? I think the comment of like not knocking the Kestrel, I sort of because I write about this quite a bit, right? And I've written some stuff like "Is the Kestrel dead?" and things like that, and it's more
Mhm,
of like a catchy thing. But the reality
mhm,
is like it is such an amazing tool. And the use case for it, the ecosystem they've built around it, is still highly useful for when you can have some vagueness in your shooting, right? And what I mean by that is when I talk to people about accuracy and precision, I sort of start from the top up, right? Now, I will often put like ELR and bench rest very similarly because if you take the distance of ELR, but then you take the accuracy of 1,000 yard bench rest, right? Where it's very
mhm,
similar in difficulty, things like that. Obviously, they have their own nuances, but you sort of start up there and you work your way backwards and you get to things like PRS where people, I feel like they're a little more forgiving in their misses, right? Because they see it hit in some berm behind. That splatter looks like it was like really close, and you're like, oh, I must have
mhm.
just missed it. But you're like, it's you don't really know, and it just I do get that feeling a lot, right? That they feel a bit more forgiving about their shots, and so and granted, keep in mind this is as you move up to the best shooters that are in PRs, that perspective changes a lot, right? And the mentality around it. I've had the opportunity to talk to a few of them about this, but I think this is one of the things that interested me in the work you were doing is that I saw it the same way, right? I was like, this doesn't really make sense. As good of a tool as this is, it doesn't make sense to me to take a measurement at my barrel and even if I'm shooting, a large caliber, 500 yards, like what's happening in between that, particularly as I'm shooting in different environments, right? If I have a row of trees to the left of me and the wind's coming from that side, what's the wind happening at my range, right, we have a lot of like berms, and there's, depending on where you are on the line, there's a huge shifting that's happening and things like that. And so that always was very odd to me because I'm like, this is great here, but it's only going to get me so far. And I take it that's was your thought as well, which sort of led you into this development.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, I think there is still a big question, which is an answered question if you have the right knowledge. But where does the wind matter? Like that
Mhm.
comes up so many times in so many places. And obviously, the real answer is it depends.
Mhm.
But I wanted to know for myself, like, where does the wind really matter? And what happens if you really do have multiple wind meters downrange and you're synthesizing all of this wind data properly? And how is the proper way to synthesize it? Because that's not obvious. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, and yeah, what if there's trees or terrain or there's, weird stuff that can happen?
Mhm.
And yeah, there's a big gap there between just like licking your thumb and stick it in the wind, and like actually getting real data and having real
Mhm.
science.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because that almost like that comparison's almost what it feels like to me, right? The jump from licking a finger, put it in the air, dropping some dirt or
Hmm.
grass or whatever, to the Kestrel was, it was such a huge significant leap in technology, right?
Yeah.
And from the Kestrel to the Wind Zero system, it felt to me as just as significant of a jump. I don't think that it hasn't caught on as much as I thought it would, and I know it's growing in a lot of different areas. But I think once people understand the use case of it, and this isn't necessarily the Wind Zero itself, but the technology and the application of these systems you guys have been developing, it makes a lot more sense. So you said you were working on these sort of this multi-year project, right? What sort of led you into that, and what did that look like for you?
Yeah. So it started with this uh, recognition of almost all of my misses are due to wind. If I could
Mm,
just have a good wind call, I could play so much higher at matches. And so I built my own wind meter, um, and uh, I had to learn how to do Arduino programming, and then I built a small heads-up display that would mount on the gun and have the wind meter send the data to the gun. Um, and then at that point, I needed a ballistic calculator because I was running my own hardware, so I need my own software. And then I set it up so that the wind meters had the LoRa long range radio, which is the same thing the Wind Zero uses.
mhm,
And so I could put these wind meters like 1,000 yards down range and get that real time data. Um, and then I also there's an important recognition of the importance of other smaller effects when you're talking about spin drift, aerodynamic jump, Coriolis, all the little stuff that a lot of the time we just leave that out of our solutions because it's kind of a pain to do.
mm,
But those essentially shift your zero down range, and that can have a massive impact on your hit probability or your especially your first round hits. And so I built, uh, I have some pictures of a giant clunky device mounted on the front of my gun, which had a compass inside of it and an inclinometer and all this hardware, and gathering like real time temperature and pressure and everything, and basically just synthesizing all of this into a single real time solution.
mhm.
And it was eye opening to see the difference that can make.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me, like you were sort of saying, the nuances of distance and things like that. And I don't know how much you can get into sort of this information because I know you're working on projects, right? But let's sort of take it. I think there's two components of this. You're talking about the nuances of what would be the app function, right? Being able to put the correct information in and have certain things turned on, right? So everything's functioning correctly. That in itself is very convoluted for newer shooters and even some seasoned shooters, right? I mean, they don't entirely understand why it's in there. Nobody really does a great job, or at least I haven't found anybody that describing like this is what'll happen if you have this on and don't have this on, and what shifts you might see. But then again, with the actual hardware, and it's like, where do you put it? Where does it have the biggest impact? So can we sort of start from that point, right? Like, I think because our biggest use case is at the barrel, right, or at the at that
Mhm.
person. If we're shooting, and I'll just use 1,000 yard as an easy, because that's what I
Mhm.
shoot F open. If we're shooting 1,000 yards, can you give us some perspective on where is the best place to do a reading, right? Realistically, how many meters would we want downrange? And how would we want that, right? I've been doing testing with the Win Zero for 6 months now, give or take. And even having the same distance, and one that's 6 feet up and one that's 15 feet up, there's a drastic difference in just that alone, right?
Yeah.
So, what does that look like, right? This sort of like, where is wind most impacted on this end? Granted, I know this is going to shift with the rounds we're using and things like that, but you can give us some general oversight on that.
Yeah. So fortunately for us, in almost every scenario, if you can only take one reading, the best place to do it is at the shooter. And the reason for that is how wind drift works. Wind drift is not a constant thing. Your bullet doesn't fly in a straight line to the side. It's a curve because it's accelerating. And so
Mhm.
whatever it does at the beginning, if it's accelerating to the left, if it hits a different wind, even if it's a completely opposite wind, it has to decelerate it before it can move it the other way. So it keeps going the way that it started going at the beginning. So because of that, your wind reading at your location is the most important one. Um, but that said, a lot of time it just depends, and it comes down to what kind of precision do you want in your wind call. And if you
Mhm.
want the highest precision, you just got to have downrange meters, and there's not really any way around that.
Yeah, I've sort of, you hear like, oh, max ordnance is the where you want it, right? Wherever the highest point of that bullet is going to be. Some people, if you're doing 1,000 yards, there'll be a huge argument for the first 500 yards is where the wind is most impactful. There'll be another group that'll say it's the second, 500 that's the most impactful. Do you have any feeling on that?
Yeah, so max ord is a great point, and that depends on your position and the terrain. If you're in a heavily wooded area and you're like shooting down a pathway, and it's your bullet at max ord is going to get above the trees, that is your most important wind because that's where it's going to get affected the most. Whereas the trees are kind of shielded.
Mhm.
But if you're, most of the time I'm out in the desert shooting and I'm on like a cliff edge or on a steep hill shooting across a valley, it's a pretty even cut all the way across. And that comes back to it all depends on the situation and the scenario. But the rule of thumb is the closest wind that's affecting it, the earliest wind that's affecting it is the one that's going to cause more wind drift.
I got you. It's really interesting. Like, I was just filming the European F Class Championships over in the UK at Bisley, and they have flags all the way down, but they're not all like exactly lined up. And there's when you are surrounded by flags, things will catch your eye. And there's one flag in like the middle of maybe 750 yards back or something like that. That's just like dead. Everything else around it is going, and I'm like looking, and I'm like, why isn't this flag moving? What's happening, and what's happening for the people that are in that path? And then there was a huge uptick in wind as the day went on, and then all of a sudden, like, that one like picked up with everything. But there's definitely something like going on right there, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's like sort of the unique use case for you sort of these products that you've incepted is you could put something up there and sort of try to figure out what's going on. Why is there the dead spot that's there in the shooting room?
Mm-hmm.
Have you done anything like this, right? Like, I mean, do you run? How many meters would you run for like 1,000 yards?
I think I've done up to like 5. I think 3 is pretty good. because yeah, the wind gets so crazy that going from 3 to 5, you may see a difference, but you may not, just because
Mhm.
if you have like a tiny dead pocket from like you're shooting 1,000 yards, and from 650 to 700 there's no wind, you're only in that pocket for 50 yards, and so it's not
Mhm.
really going to do that much to affect
Mhm.
your trajectory. And so kind of getting the bigger picture is more important, as far as just like diminishing returns, that you could put out 50 wind meters, and that would be awesome. That'd be a cool
Yeah.
experiment to do one day. But
Mhm.
in practice, you're going to get diminishing returns as you go.
Yeah, I think my goal is four, and I want to run three of them out, and then I want to run one of them that's a little bit below where one is, and just so I have contextually like, hey, this is what we're seeing at a little bit lower there, but run those main three, right? Because that's sort of
Hmm.
what's suggested in the literature, is to run those out, and I think it pairs three and runs the data on the three, and then you can switch between those, right?
Right. Yeah. And for the Win Zero, yeah, that's right. It only will use three at a time. So,
Hmm.
but
Yeah. So
yeah, in my opinion, there's not much need for more than that for normal shooting.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting in general, right? Talk about the growth of technology within this industry in the last 5 years, and every year, right? We're starting to see these things that it's like it really does remind me of like Rocky versus the Russian, right? Like Drago, and he has all of that like new technology and things like that, right? And I own a lot of this stuff. And I think of like the SG Pulse, where you can put it on your rifle and it'll show you exactly. You can record yourself. It'll show you exactly how your barrel's moving, right? And so I think of products like these where, let's say there's front rests for F class, right? A lot of people don't really understand this, but the nuance of the F class rifle is how well it mitigates torquing on the front end of your rifle to keep it consistent, right? Um, well, unless you shoot a lot, a lot, a lot, you don't really notice it, is the truth, right?
Hmm.
So you have little things like this to start to cut the curve. And that's what this system to me is, right? And is that what when you were thinking about like, maybe it wasn't like this much thought. Maybe you're just like, I want a really cool thing to make this easier. But like, had you sort of envisioned that where you're like, this could really cut the curve for shooters to get into the space? Because the truth is it's so expensive and it takes so long for for a lot of people it could be frustrating, and these are the sort of things that keep people in the space longer, making it easier for them. Did you have any sort of thought around that?
Yeah, definitely. Just like an anecdote, I shoot the ELR match in Wyoming every year,
Mm.
and I'd shoot with my Kestrel, and I would. It's a pretty long hike between stages at that match, and I'd show up huffing and puffing, drop my gear, and then I've got to like race to like get my Kestrel out, like get my bearings, get my wind reads, like make sure it's just like this panic of like I'm up next, I got to get this stuff going. And then the year that I took my device, and also when I took the Win Zero this past year, I just walk up to the stage and I punch in the ranges, and then I'm done. And
Yeah.
for the Win Zero, I guess I have to put in my azimuth too.
Mhm.
But yeah, just like being able to step up there and and say, I know where my target is. Like, why should I have to do all of this work to get my
Mhm.
azimuth and my incline and my this and that, and like make sure I've got all the inputs right? Like, computers can do this better than me. Why doesn't a computer do it?
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, and I know that, or at least I've been hearing that the Win Zero has been doing fairly well in that ELR space, right? Because they are
Hmm.
so highly reliant on that technology, right? Not necessarily the Win Zero, but their ability to get data on what's happening with the wind and make those corrections. So that's really cool to see it there. So you're like, you made your own device. I
Hmm.
assume it still exists somewhere. You make your own ballistic calculator, I take it. I think you didn't really talk about that much, but yes.
Yes, yep. I had to make a ballistic calculator to be able to to drive this device. And part of it was there are ballistic calculators out there that you can just like download, and there's some open source ones, but none of them could handle multiple wind inputs.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to just average all my winds together, which isn't like a horrible strategy, but I felt like there was a better way. And so that forced me to write my own that can manage multiple winds and do it correctly, not just, do a guess or whatever.
Yeah, I'd hate to put you on the spot here, but do you think that your ballistic calculator is in some ways or in many ways superior to other ballistic calculators out there? Because what I'm seeing a lot, we're seeing a lot of new ballistic calculating systems come on the market, right? I couldn't make one of these, but apparently other people can, right? Is this system really good? And like, how do you gauge accuracy on this? How do you know how well one is better than the other, right? Do you have some insight on that?
Yeah, for sure. So to answer the question, is mine better? Or in general, is any one better than another? Generally, no. The math is pretty well established. There's a lot of literature. It's not like that hard to go and make one. It's not saying it's easy. It's a lot of work.
For some.
There's a lot of things that can go wrong. But then once you've built one, you can validate it. Like you can go and get multiple calculators and plug inputs in and say, well, they did this and mine does that, and that gets you like your main effects. Like, did I do spin drift correctly? Is it going in the right direction? Is it like the right order of magnitude? So it's generally speaking, most ballistic calculators are going to give you similar results. I think maybe the big differentiating factor is the inputs, right? That internally they don't do that much different. There's a few different ways to approach it, but generally they're all doing the same thing one way or another. But giving it the right inputs is where the magic happens. Like Applied Ballistics has been focusing really hard on their custom drag curves and their personal drag curves to get the drag to match your bullet better. And the thing that sets my calculator apart is it takes multiple winds. And it doesn't average them internally. If it simulates, if you say the first 500 yards it's blowing left to right, and then the last 500 yards it blows right to left, it switches, it will actually simulate that trajectory, which I'm not aware of any other calculators on the market that do that.
I mean, I would be surprised considering I don't think Wind Zero is like hooked up to anything besides Eagle Ballistics is the only other one I think I know they're hooked up to. So it would be a use case to where they don't have the hardware to even make sense on why that would be in their software. So that would make a ton of sense. So you create this hardware, you create this software, you're good to go. Why didn't you just put it out? Why didn't you just sell it?
Yeah, to be perfectly honest, it was going to be extremely expensive to produce it at the quality level that I wanted to,
Mm-hmm.
at the cost that I wanted to. I could have just made it really expensive, um, or I could have produced it at a cost I wanted, but at a quality lower. And so I hadn't shelved it permanently, but I kind of said, I'm just setting this aside for now, focusing on other things while I figure this out. And then during that time is when I heard about the Win Zero, and I contacted Doug.
What would it cost like for you independently? What did you I mean, I assume you got some numbers on to make it the way that you knew it deserved to be made, to be able to get these out, right? And with the expectation that like you're not gonna have huge batches, so it would have been more like singular order. What would that look like for and I don't know if if it's the same function as the Wind Zero, right? Because they essentially have the receiver and they have the wind meter. Was it like that, or was there some other hardware there?
Yeah, so there's the wind meter, and the wind meter also had the pressure and temperature sensors,
Mm-hmm.
and a few other goodies packed in there. But the if I were to go back to it, which obviously I'm partnered with Wind Zero now, so there's not much reason to. But in hindsight, I should have gone with the ultrasonic meters like Doug did. Mine was the weather vane and the spinning cups,
Mm.
and I had been pursuing that. So the to get it to the quality I wanted, I was going to have to do injection molding for a lot of parts. And
Mm.
if you know anything about injection molding, once they're set up, they're crazy cheap, but they're crazy expensive to get the molds made. And so that was the point where I was like, I'm not sure what the path forward is.
Did you know what a unit cost would have looked like, right? Because I think, oh man, I haven't looked at the cost of the Win Zeros in a while, but I think they're what, like 600 and something per unit.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, that was one of my goals. Is I felt like the Kestrel was overpriced, and that's not to knock on the Kestrel, but because I know their R&D costs are incredible for a device
Mm.
like that. Because I've done that.
Yeah.
But as far as like the actual production cost for something like that, they're pretty low. The so I felt like if China were to rip that off and sell their own, they're
Mm.
probably going to sell it for like $50 to $100.
Mm.
Which I don't think they. I hope they don't. I don't buy the
Yeah.
crappy Chinese ripoffs of stuff.
Fair enough.
But just economically, I felt like there was an opportunity that you should be able to produce something like this for much cheaper.
Mm.
So that was my goal, is to produce a system that was less than a Kestrel, which I think was like 700 at the time. So,
Mm.
and I think it could have been possible, or it was possible once you get past the cost of the molds. But um, yeah, maybe we'll never know.
Yeah, I mean the initial startup cost on a lot of this is very expensive. The R&D costs, right, are really expensive. So I totally understand that, and it's interesting. So you essentially you find out about the Win Zero, and you're like, hey, like I think I have a solution that would help improve your system.
Yeah. I basically just emailed Doug. I kind of researched it a little, and I saw he had a similar product to what I was doing. The but his was essentially just a wind meter at the time,
Mm.
or multiple wind meters, and it could show you all the winds. But he didn't have the ballistic calculator built in, and I'm like, well, this isn't the exact thing that I was trying to build, but this is the most important part of the
Mm.
thing I was trying to build. And so I emailed him and said, hey, I built something like this. I'm not going to market with it, but I think we could partner and put my ballistic calculator onto your hardware and into your app.
Mm. And how long ago was that?
Oh gosh, how long ago was that? I honestly, I'd have to check. If I'm gonna guess, I think maybe like it was last year when I contacted him. Um, but yeah, so maybe a year ago or so.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the thing that's interesting about a product like this, right? Or as a marketer in the space, right? I get a lot of interesting background on products that a lot of people don't really understand, right? They get the pamphlet version, right? This is a little bit about the founder, and this is sort of like the use case or whatever. But when you look at products like this and you look at the use case and you look at how they've made a shift in the market, that was what was so interesting to me. From being an F class competitor and a fairly new one, and I wouldn't argue ever a very good one, but somebody who sort of understands a little bit about what's going on, I follow sort of some of the major clubs, major ranges around the country. And this is to take nothing away from the shooters that are already out there in Texas, because they are already outstanding shooters. They're already part of a good club, and they are already a good team. But you start to see this weird little shift that's happening over there, right? And you're starting to see more individual wins. You're starting to see more team wins. And then you find out there's this device that they're using, right? And it was very much in F class. They consider themselves like the F1 of shooting, and it very much felt like that. Like they had this new technology that was making a significant impact in their training protocol, in their team protocol. And these are a lot of guys that are on the world team. And so you see this device. Is that what you sort of saw it being? Did you see it having this much of an impact immediately for people like Doug, who not only are an engineer but are one of the top shooters in the country, for that to make such an impact that quickly.
I don't know if I ever thought about it. I'm just excited about the science of it, and I you know, and so I just wanted to like get something out there, and but it is exciting to see people having such good success with it.
I mean, it must feel pretty good, right? I mean, I can say, and I do say this all the time, I really think that like, this system is probably the biggest leap forward in our ability to be successful in outdoor precision shooting. Any product has been in the since the Kestrel came out, right?
Hmm.
I don't think that there is a single nether product that is this good, and it's hard for people to understand it because there's not a ton of stuff out there on it, and a lot of that has to do with like it's not new, but it's new to a lot of people, and they're sort of using it to get that competitive edge. I know that this has ended up with a lot of military as well, and they're clearly not going to put up any videos on it, right? So you're sort of in this weird spot. And even myself, I've had it, and I've been like, how do I position this out here, right? Like, how do I, I'm for one, like, I don't want to put stuff out where I'm wrong, which would be embarrassing, right? Because like you said, there's the technology side, how you said, there's sort of the nuances of it. Like a lot of times I have to send an email and ask, like, is this right? Am I looking at this from the right perspective of the functionality that it's supposed to provide to this product, right? But what I can say is I look at it from a different case use, and you can tell me if this makes sense or not. But like 1 meter to me is a perfect buy, because what it allows me to do is it allows me to put a wind flag up, and I use a NRA regulated flag, right? And I put it up at a height like 20 feet up, and then I can run a wind meter at the same exact height, and it actually shows me what the flag is doing compared to the wind, right? And to me, that's sort of the biggest thing, because when you, and granted, not every discipline has flags, but I've been able to use it from that case, and I've been able to go from that's essentially from like 5 to 10 miles per hour to like that's a 2.7, right? That's
Hmm.
a 3.4. And literally like in 2 or 3 months, I'm able to get it fairly good. And I can tell like the way the flag looks, the way it flips, the way the corners come in, the way the corners go out, the arches that happen and undulate. I can tell like what the wind was doing and is like turning into, which I never thought I would be able to like do. And it's literally because I can hold this meter up, I can have it at the same exact height as the flags and do that, right? Do you use it for that use case? Do you know of anybody that's using it for that case?
I haven't heard of that before, but that's a great idea. I know in Brian Litz's book, I think it's his first book, Applied Ballistics for Long Range Shooting. He says that part of the way he got good at F class, or I think he shot F class, was he just carried a wind meter everywhere he went, and every time he felt the wind, he'd be like, "I bet that's 10 miles an hour." Hold up his wind meter, and yeah, like training yourself and teaching yourself. This is what 10-mile-an-hour wind looks like, or this is what a 2-mile-an-hour wind looks like,
Mhm.
and having that ingrained in you is a big deal. Yeah.
It is a huge advantage, and I've been sort of my best friend, sort of like my brother. He's a mechanic, diesel mechanic now, but I remember him going through like UTI for school, and he was really. I remember him coming home one time and being really hyped up because in one of his classes they had a technician show up, like a senior technician, who explained to them that he was so good at diagnosing cars that he didn't have to look at them; he could hear the problem and he could tell them what was wrong with it, right? And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. And I took that. I was a swim coach for 12 years, and I took that sort of mentality. And I can hear when people are swimming wrong. I can hear when they're kicking wrong. I can hear if they're pulling wrong. And I thought, and that's another thing, like these sensories that maybe a lot of people aren't picking up on. But what, not only like, because what you don't understand if you don't shoot all the time is the way you're laying, you can't see. It's not like you're just sitting and staring at flags, right? So I was like, what does 10 miles per hour sound like? Right? What does it
Yeah.
look like? What does it feel like? And so this allows me to do all of those because I can realistically look at it. And because the Wind Zero does the wind charting, right? If for some reason I miss the number barely, I can just look at what the chart says, right? But I can, and it's not just anymore. Like I can just keep my eyes shut and listen and be like, okay, what sound is that flag making? And that's one flag. When you're at a range, there's a bunch more of them. They're all making, if fairly similar around you sound, right? It's such a unique thing that you can do that you can't do with any other product, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think
So,
also watching the mirage and just when you need to just get on the gun and take a shot, being able to just see the mirage and have a good sense for what the wind is doing is
mhm.
invaluable.
Yeah, exactly. So that's been my first case use because I think like we have a lot of disciplines that are flag oriented. I also do it. I live in Sacramento, we're the city of trees, so we have a ton of trees around us. So I'm able to do it in that same perspective, thinking about NRL and PRS, centerfire and rimfire, how they have use terrain, not flags, and sort of like what do these type of trees, how do they work in this wind, and can I tell anything, right? Because you do read these a lot of like in the wind books, right? They'll tell you like look for the thickness of a branch, right? And if that thickness of a branch is moving, then that that's sort of generally the wind or whatever. So that's been a really cool tool for me, and I figure most everybody, unless you live in an HOA, can put up a wind flag in in their backyard, right, and do this skill set, and build it up, right, and have that as something in your tool belt that you can do, and then you can take these out to your range. So I've been able to take it out to 300 yards and run them, every 100 yards and just see what's happening out there, which is not, I don't compete at 300 yards, but just generally for short course of bench is what I've been interested in, because they put up all those really little flags and things like that. And I thought, okay, this is a really cool use case for that. And I want to get one more meter, and then I want to go out to 1,000. Right, that's sort of and
Hmm.
start mapping that sort of situation out. But sort of building it, and then I'm going to bring in the bench rest team. I'm going to bring in the F class team, and where I think this is, and I don't, if I would assume this is part of what maybe you developed, but the profiles that you can put in there,
Hmm.
and so being able to have a team and put different people's profiles in there and make it and just switch between profiles so it goes to their bullet and we can see what those shifting look like. I mean, that's a crazy team skill that you guys can bring in, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So as you could tell, I'm fairly excited about it. I just I want to see like Doug and his guys like really put some stuff out about it because they're really using it at the highest capacity that you can use it and have success with it, right? Um, which has been I know there's like one video out there that I've seen. You might actually be in it. I'm not entirely sure. Somebody is in it. Oh, maybe it's the Eagle Ballistics guy. I forget his name right now. That's in it, but that video is fairly like good, where they're showing the adjustments and things like that. So this product gets made. You partner with Win Zero. It gets out in the community. What else are you working on around this space, right? And can you give us some insight? Like, what is it that you see most often where people just don't really understand about what they're doing, that which could, if they did understand it, could make them a better shooter and a better competitor?
Yeah. So I kind of have too many irons in the fire right now. Working on a lot of software, doing some work on statistics, and I'm working on a book about bullet design, are kind of the main things I've been doing lately. And yeah, as far as just like some science that can just like instantly make you a better shooter,
Hmm.
is people zero their guns with like 5-shot groups,
Hmm.
and you need a lot more than that. And that's one of the things I've been doing a lot of is the science of hit probability, and the statistics of shooting, and learning how many rounds it really takes to like prove something out. Um, and that like sometimes you need like 30 to 50 rounds to properly zero a gun. Um, yeah. So yeah, shoot more rounds for
Yeah.
zeroing.
It's funny you mentioned that because I've been giving a lot of consideration to the statistical probability of these groupings, right? And how many shots do you have to do in what sequence and in cadence and repeatability that would allow for significance of that, if we called it a study, right?
Hmm.
Um, for instance, like if I go shoot, I think about like the Fowler shots, right? If I go there with a completely clean gun and I shoot 5 shots and my first 2 shots were what we would consider Fowlers, but then know that you're not going to clean your rifle after every one, right? So is that a good thing, a good shot group to add to this to these studies? I don't really know, right? So I would say like maybe you shoot the first 5 and then after that you don't. But then I also think like how quickly people are shooting it, and are you letting your barrel cool down, and like should we do a 5 group shot and we make sure that those shots have to be shot, they within 10 or 15 seconds, you shoot those and then you have to let your barrel sit for 5-10 minutes and then you do it again. Do these things matter? I don't know. Maybe there's already people doing it, but I do think about that stuff, right? And particularly about how many groups you shoot. And the my biggest pet peeve in this industry is when people described anyone who owns a custom rifle is a tack driver. Every single one. It's the
Right.
best.
They're all quarter
Yeah,
minute all
yeah.
day.
Somehow your this bench rest gun and this rimfire gun shoot just as well. They're the best. I'm like, there's no way that that's true, right? So I sort of think about that, like at what distance should you be really doing that where you can, like for me, 1,000 yard, right? If I'm shooting 1,000 yard group and my goal is to get it in the X every time, that's how I'm going to measure the success of that rifle, right? Not at 100 yards, which at 100 yards all my rifles shoot really really well, particularly if I do 1 to 3 5 shot groups, right? And a
Yeah.
lot of people do 3 shot groups, right? Do you have an opinion on that? Like how many do you need to do? How should it be spaced out? Like, have you done any study or seen them?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so to answer the question of like a cold bore or a clean bore, the so the data on that we have is for clean bore, like if you scrub your barrel clean, you're going to see a difference for usually one shot. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you're most likely going to see a difference in muzzle velocity. So if you have cleaned it, then yeah, I would definitely take a fouler, put it in the dirt, ignore that one. For cold bore, the we what I've seen and reproduced is there's not usually a cold bore shift. It's extremely rare for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It is very common for there to be a cold shooter shift.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a friend who I shoot with a lot, and we both had these 7 mils that we built that were extremely similar. And we were shooting like every single week, and every time he goes and shoots a cold bore and then shoots a 5 shot group, and I think it was like 3/4 minute high or something every single time, every week. And he's like, this gun's got a 3/4 minute cold bore. And next time we go out, I'm like, hold on, shoot my gun first. And he goes and shoots it, and mine has a 3/4 minute cold bore shift all of a sudden. And then he switches to his gun and shoots the cold bore, and it just goes right in the center.
Mm-hmm.
The and that's I'm not the only one who's found that. I didn't come up with that. I tested it, but that's pretty common that your first shot of the day, for whatever reason, we have a hard time warming up to that, and we tend to have a cold bore shift because of us, not because of the gun. For how many shots should you shoot? So another study I did, which I wasn't intentionally studying this. I was doing a different study, and I took my 6.5 Creedmoor, and this is on YouTube. You can go find it on my channel on Blackburn Defense. But we shoot just like 100 round string, I think, just one after the other. And what we found was, and we shot it in 5-shot groups sequentially, and we found the 5-shot groups were slowly shifting to the left as we went. As the gun got hot, it shifted, and then I reproduced that on a different day. Where as the gun got hot, the zero moved. So to answer your question, how many should you do? The way you're going to use it when you're using that gun is what I would do. So if you're shooting 10-round PRS stages, I would shoot 10 rounds at a time, because whatever heating and shift is going to happen is going to now get built into your zero. If you're hunting, I might shoot only like 3 at a time. Because however much it heats up, you don't want to have a hot gun zero for when your gun's cold and you're hiking around and you finally find that trophy animal. And then I've also done a decent amount of research on how many shots do you need, and this one's, for whatever reason, very controversial. People get angry about this when I say 5 rounds is not enough to zero a gun. And in almost all cases, 10 rounds is not enough to zero a gun. And people come out of the woodwork and they're like, my grandpappy, he zeroed his gun with 5 rounds and fought the Nazis. And I love your granddad for that. That's awesome. But if you go, so again, if you go to that video I did on that Creedmoor, you will see, before it heats up, all these 5-shot groups, and none of them agree with each other on where the zero should be. And so I did a bunch of work on the statistics of it and the math behind it, and I ended up writing a tool, which I believe I have this one up on the website, on my website, where you can go and you can say, my gun shoots this accuracy level. It shoots like average 5-shot group is 3/4 MOA. How many shots do I need to actually zero it? And it'll run the math and tell you, if you want a 95% confidence, I think it's like 30 shots or something like that. Which I think, as a rule of thumb, 30 shots is a good number to if you want like a really good solid zero.
Yeah, I wonder. When I was in grad school, I took statistical analysis, quantitative analysis, and to have a significantly relative, more significant sample size, for like what I had to do for my study, they're saying I think I had to have at least 500 participants, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought about that for shooting, and oftentimes I wonder, I might be wasting a lot of ammo that I don't need to. It's very possible, but the way that I do it is I do, sometimes I'll do 5 groups, sometimes I'll do 3, but I do 30 rounds, right? So sometimes I'll do 10 3-shot rounds, and this also depends on the tuner as well, right? I do a bunch of tuner tests as well, so that adds a bunch more rounds on. But I'll normally do that on a different day, so it's sort of like it's a multiple day step for me. But I'll do like 30 rounds, and then I will do, because we shoot 20 round, I'll do 20 rounds in 20 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
As if I was competing, and I'll zero at 100, and then I'll go to 300 and I'll shoot that, and then I'll see how is that doing over there, right? And then I might come the next time and do a tuner test on for that. So that's always sort of been my opinion on it, where I'm like, I think we need more than we do, particularly for myself, who I'm like, I would rather spend more time here on my ammo than wondering at 1,000 yards, right? Or 800 yards or 900 yards if I did the right thing. And maybe that's why I'm a little bit off.
Yeah, and I think something that's pretty common is somebody will zero their gun and they're like, oh, perfect zero. They shoot 5 shots, and then they throw it in the truck driver the match, and they get there and like got to confirm zero. They shoot it and they're like, oh, I'm a click high, or I'm 2 clicks high, and they'll take that out. And they're like, oh, I must have shifted from the vibrations on the road or something.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, but probably not. It's probably just that you needed to shoot more shots. And if
Mm-hmm.
you would have shot, a 30-shot zero, and then trusted that when you got to the range, if you shot another 30 shot zero, which I'm not advising, that's like, burning through so much ammo, uh, but that's the fact of the matter is your zero is probably wrong.
Yeah. Well, and I think I always talk about this. I try to explain to people that we talk about this at different levels, right? Sometimes we talk about this as an entry level shooter who's just out there to try to have some fun. And then we also talk about it like if you're trying to podium, you're trying to be, on a world team or, whatever. That's a different level of commitment to this. And I think for you as, I guess, a statistician or a scientist or however you refer to yourself, generally, I would imagine this is just interesting information for you. But for myself, like I said, like I'm already going to go through a crap load of rounds, and nothing is more frustrating than putting the effort in. It takes hardly any effort to shoot at 100, right? I mean, it's not that far to
Hmm.
walk, but you go to 1,000 and you have to have a bunch of people out there. You have to set up all the e targets. You have to load for that distance, and you're out there and things are not going right. That is the most frustrating day. And I've found that a lot of times it's because I did something wrong at the 100, and that's why I sort of went away from that, like, the smaller sample size, and went to the larger sample size, things like that. So that's super interesting, right? So what other things are you working on? I know you probably can't talk about all of them, but you did sort of mention your website. Do you want to talk about that? Because from when you showed me stuff, I don't know if anything new has gone on there that you've been working on, or what's on there, tools, and what's sort of your goal here, right? Are you just trying to help people? You're just like the Santa Claus of the long range shooting world.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. At least for right now, that's all it is, um, yeah, it happened, again, I didn't plan out the website or anything. It was just that I started working with someone on a project we built a really complex tool for uh, testing concentricity of bullets. It was
Mm.
a very cool project where we had two Mitutoyo dial indicators hooked up to I forget which concentricity checker it is, but it's one of the expensive ones, and it was motorized. And then these
Oh.
digital mitotoil dial indicators were feeding into a computer and producing offset sine waves. And anyway, there's just like this insane amount of math that we were doing, and I'm like, well, I got a tool for this thing over here, and I got a tool for this thing over here, and my this friend of mine, Lou Smith, is who I did it with. He's just like, you got to put all these tools together. They're everywhere. And so I'm like, you're right. So I put together a website, and I started aggregating all of these tools that I've been building over the years. And there's quite a few now. So yeah, it's just something that I've been doing as a passion project. And it's at blackburndefense.com. And it's got the one that is probably the most fun is the hit probability, where it's kind of like the applied ballistics WES, if you've ever seen that, where you can put in my muzzle velocity is this, and my muzzle velocity variation is this, and my BC, and you put in all of the things and tell it your target range and shape, and it will simulate a million shots or whatever and say your probability of hitting this on the first round 70%.
Mm.
Yeah, so that the website
Have
is
you
just kind
found
of
that to be a fairly useful tool for ELR? Because that's where it would most likely be beneficial, right? Or first round hits.
yeah. Yeah, so the this tool, it does first and second round hit probabilities. The second round is if you can just see where the bullet landed and make an adjustment and send another one in the same conditions. Um, and so it's kind of for all kinds of scenarios. Hunting is one of the big ones where, if you've just got like 2 seconds to pop up and shoot at a deer, and your position's not good, and how far away can that deer be, and you can just like have confidence to shoot it. Spoiler, it's a lot closer than you think.
Yeah, I believe it.
Which go watch the backfire video, that I participated in. I use this calculator in there. You can see all these excellent shooters missing the shots on game at hundreds of yards.
Yeah, Backfire, and I mean a bunch of channels do, but I know Backfire. Eric Cortina is doing some of his challenges, and you know, the Ethical Hunter challenge that he was doing. I know there's the one MOA challenge that's out there. So all of those are really interesting to watch, and I'd love to just like honestly like have a chair and kick back and watch like in real time people shoot these things because the only time I've ever like really been able to get through to somebody is I hold a couple of networking events throughout the year where we have people come, they bring firearms, we sort of shoot each other's firearms, and it's for most people it's the first time they've ever been behind a high-end built rifle. And the feedback I always get is wow, the bullet goes exactly where you're looking, right? And then that's the first time I ever really see it click in people's heads, like how good these things are. And we try to bring out like the last time we had my 6.5 Creed build, and then my brother brought his 30-06, right, which he hadn't shot in 10 years, so we had to like zero it and things. But you know, you bring these out, and it's sort of like it sort of brings home like how good the rifles have gotten. But then to sort of your point about wind and things like that, now that comes down to the person, right, or the hunter or the competitor, and that's what you get to see on these challenges they're doing. And for me, as a person who does shoot, I'm realistic to say like I don't know if I could do that. Like I don't know if I could get a first round in on that. And I look at the people who are doing it, I'm like they're fairly accomplished shooters. I don't think I could do that. So for me, it is really cool to watch, and you got to do it right. And I think you did like half well, right? Like fairly well on it.
Yeah, yeah, I did. I didn't do as well as I should have on the accuracy,
Mm-hmm.
and I just made a stupid mistake and held the wrong direction
Mm-hmm.
on one of them, so that kind of killed me. But on the hunting one, I was proud of myself. I said, if you haven't seen the video, he starts the challenge with saying, "How far? What's your ethical hunting distance for shooting a deer?" Or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. And pretty much everyone says like 400 to 600 yards or like 800 yards. And I had used my calculator, and I went and shot this rifle I was using and got my muzzle velocity and my group size, and I got all the info and I plugged it in. And I'm like, how far away can I shoot this deer and just be like 99% confident I'm going to hit it? And it was only 300 yards. Um, which like for accomplished long range shooters, that's like a really embarrassing thing to say, even though it's like true. This was not because it was a bad rifle. This is an excellent rifle, super accurate, and it's just an ego thing, which we all struggle with, and we all want to say, oh yeah, I can cold bore a deer at 800 yards. And the fact is you can't. No one can. There's no system out there that you can have 99% confidence or even 95% confidence at 800 yards. It just can't be done. And there's always going to be someone who's like, oh, well, I shot a deer. I know you did. And I know you can hit them, but you just can't guarantee that.
Yeah, sometimes the stars align, right? But it's funny you said that because when you're like, what's the size? How do you measure what an ethical shot is? Like, how wide can that shot be?
Yeah. So I think if I remember right, I plugged in a 10-inch circle as my target, which I think maybe the one I shot there was slightly smaller, but that's the rule of thumb for a deer is a 10-inch circle, which only counts if you can actually put the crosshair right in the vitals, because
Mm,
when you're looking at a real deer, it doesn't show you where the heart is.
sure.
Um, yeah, but then that's also just an upper bound,
Yeah.
because a lot of things can go wrong. You have wobble, or you think the wind's going one way and it's blowing completely the opposite way.
Mm,
When I did it, I think I put in that I should be able to hold zero wind and have up to a 10 mile per hour wind and still hit the thing. And funny enough, when I got down to take the shot, I was in a truck bed and I couldn't tell which way the wind was going. And so that's literally what I had to do is I just did a center hold and send
mm,
it. But because I had done the math and I had that margin of error, it still hit the target.
mm. Yeah, honestly, I was like 300 yards is where I think I would be. And that's not the truth because I mean, I don't shoot off bipods very often anymore, right? I'm almost always
Mhm.
shooting off front rest, and there's a lot of it's a very helpful tool to keep you aligned with where you're going. And not only that, I'm shooting down a straight line. I know my environment and things like that, and so I was thinking well, maybe 400, but probably 300 would be fairly confident with that. And I know even sometimes like to your point about like people are like, oh, I've had a first round shot at whatever 800 yards on a deer, right? Like I've had X shots, first shots at 1,000 yards. It happens, but that's not normal, right? I mean, that's
Yeah,
not normal at all for
and it's
me. For me.
the same kind of ego of my gun shoots quarter MOA all day, and I believe you, it has shot quarter MOA before, but if it shoots quarter MOA all day, like go win some cash with that thing. What take that Ruger 1022 and show up to the bench rests like
Yeah,
and go win.
yeah.
But that's just not how it works. And that was one of the first big study I did, which was just eye opening. Was we took a whole bunch of different guns and we just went and shot 100 shot groups with all of them.
Hmm.
And one of them we did was just an M4, just like classic, 5.56 military style rifle, and it has M4 stamped on the receiver. And we shoot a 100 shot group with that. And if you're familiar with those rifles, they're pretty well known to be about 3 to 4 MOA. Which, if I shoot 5 shot groups with mine, that's exactly what I get. But when we shot a 100 shot group with that, I think it was like 12 inches.
Mm.
And when you take these really high end guns and do the same thing, even if you're shooting half MOA on every single group, when you have a 100 shot group all added together, it's probably more like 1 to 2 MOA on
Hmm.
these high end custom rifles. And this is just like this hidden thing that we don't see because we shoot these small sample sizes and we're like, look, it shoots half MOA every time. Well, but when you combine them all together, it really doesn't. It's not even close.
Hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I'm not one to fight with people, but I will say that like because I have put in effort to talk to every discipline, right, and sort of get their perspective on ammunition and reloading and how all of that works. When this is most likely happens with PRS, and they're like, "Oh no, I could take my PRS rifle out to an F class match and win," and I'm like I don't think you can, man. I'm like, I get you have like a really competitive rifle for your discipline, but I'm like, you don't understand. Like, there's a different thing going on, and the same thing from like F to bench, right? I went out with some of these. I'm really lucky. There's some guys out here that like were are world level shooters for bench short course is what they're doing out here now, and I was embarrassed to shoot near them, dude. These guys are literally putting bullets in the same hole over and over and over, dude. And I'm like, this is crazy how good you guys are. And when you get to spend time with them and they tell you their process, and it's hard to like combat 30 years of experience, right? Um, I will say I do some stuff with some teen shooters, and like Shiloh's a good example. She's an F class shooter, and she just set a national record for the women are tied it. She shot a 219x at nationals. So there's clearly something going on with the equipment and things like that, but it's always so interesting to do, and that's why I appreciate stuff like what you're doing, what Brian Litz is doing, and other people who put the time and effort into that. And it's some stuff that I'm going to get into as well, but I think when you start to get into it, it's expensive, right? And it's a
Yeah.
time consuming, and you're really just doing it for the sake of doing it for the community. It's not like somebody's like, "Hey, Mac, I'm going to pay you $10,000 to go do this research," right? So that's sort of the thing that it runs into. But I appreciate the work you're doing. And I know we're sort of getting to the tail end of this. I know there's a lot more that we could talk about, and maybe in the future we could bring up some of your work you've done and sort of shown it. But before we jump off, can you give everybody your website again so they can go check it out? You see these tools, how they maybe can be impactful for their shooting.
Yeah, it's blackburndefense.com. And if you go there, if I remember right, I've got a feedback. Oh, contact us is what it's called. There's a contact us at the top. Drop me a line. Just tell me what you think. If you have ideas for new tools or if you find a bug, love to hear from you.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff, granted, I thought it was much cooler because you were there to explain it to me. But a lot of it, I was like, this is amazing. Like, this is truly an amazing thing to see. And it is to me where I want to see this industry go, because I think it opens up a world of possibilities for the way we're competitive, how much more competitive people can be. And it gives us an opportunity to expand the industry, because if we can be more competitive, if we can find ways to feature that stuff, right? Like the Wind Zero, I film with it, and then I get to put up what the wind was doing while I was shooting, right? And so that sort of stuff is making a big impact, because at the current state, it's fairly boring for most people to watch people shoot, right? I enjoy it, like I'll sit there and do it, but for most people it isn't. So there's sort of this meshing that's happening with like the work that you're doing, which allows people to progress so much quicker and to see real time, or to see how they can make these significant impacts. And then the other technology that's happening, which with products like the Win Zero. So you're sort of on the forefront, whether you sort of look at it that way or not. I do, as sort of a pioneer in what we're doing and the way we're progressing and moving forward with this industry. And I'm excited to see some of those irons burn out and see the realization of the hard work that you're doing, and see how I can use that to try to catch up. Because I do often worry, like, how am I ever going to outshoot Norm or Tim or Doug when these guys are all shooting together and they're in the best place and they have everything they need? And I'm like, I need somebody to come up with some tools to help me out. So I think that's where I'm at with it. But I appreciate you being on. I know that it's fairly late. Thank you so much. Did you have I don't know if you actually have an Instagram or anything like that you want to direct people to?
No, I don't have Instagram. You can check out my YouTube channel. It's just
Okay.
Blackburn Defense. I apologize for not being active on there lately, but uh, like I said, I've got too many things I'm working on. So hopefully someday I'll get back,
Well, we're
start
looking
putting out
forward
more.
to the book, right? That's the big thing right now. So hopefully we get to
Yeah.
read that. Appreciate you being on. All of you guys listening, thank you so much. Remember to like, comment, and share. It goes a long way to growing this community. Make sure you go check out the website. And if you guys have some time, get out to the range and take the shot. I'll see you guys next time.